Hello and welcome to Android Developers Backstage. I'm Tor Norby from the Android Developer Tools and Libraries team, and I have two familiar faces as co-hosts today.
Who are we? I'm Chet from my house.
I'm Romain.
All right, and our guests?
I'm Diego Perez from the Android Studio team.
And I'm Patrick Fuentes from the Developer Relations team for Android XR.
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 So I've heard of AR, I've heard of VR. What is XR?
I've heard of it, and I wanted to start this off by saying I have no idea what you're talking about. Like the last time I tuned into AR, there was cardboard involved. And I'm pretty sure it's moved on from there. So
you're off by 10 years, Chet.
I know. I had stuff to do. Can you give us like a fast forward where like all this stuff started and where is it at now with XR?
Yeah, Diego?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So you probably heard last year there was the announcement of Android XR.
Sure.
Which is, let's assume that you did. So it is this platform that basically it is for extended reality. So it's an extension of Android, it's built on top of Android, and it was built by Google in collaboration with Samsung and Qualcomm. And it's a set of APIs that allow to build immersive experiences using Android. So if you're familiar with building applications for Android, Android XR, it builds on the same type of framework and infrastructure, but it allows you to build these 3D experiences in headsets. And after that, there was the announcement of the Galaxy XR headset from Samsung, which is the first headset that actually is built using the platform. And that is basically the movement that happened last year. I know that I missed like a few years maybe in the middle between cardboard and that.
That's okay, just ignore Chet. Keep going.
But yeah, basically like quickly catching up with what has happened in the last few years.
Okay. And that's VR, right? Why is it called XR?
They have to use new letters with the like every 5 years there's a new letter. They just do a swap.
Think of the X as an asterisk. It's kind of like a regex. It's like it's AR and VR.
Yeah, so it's a variable. The X is the variable.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
So it is called XR because, again, while headsets was the first form factor that actually is using this platform, it is going to extend into others. And there was an announcement this week about a couple new platforms that are going to be using this technology. And one of them is XR glasses.
Well, even in the headset, right? Like the XR headset that Samsung showed, you can have, to your point, extended reality where you can see the world around you and you can superimpose apps in that space, but you can also have like full screen experiences that are basically VR. So you can do both.
So it also has AR in it.
It's an AR, except you're not seeing the world through directly through your eyes, through cameras.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is fully covered like the other headsets that we've seen with the gaming headsets for years, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
yeah.
so you're only in your own world and you don't have to deal with
because there's a camera, so it's doing pass-through or something. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's pass-through mode. So it has cameras, so you can enable pass-through, and then you can look around you and you can see the room that is...
emphasis on cameras, not a camera. There's a lot of cameras.
Yeah, there's a lot of cameras. There's not one camera, yeah.
And then can you, instead of AR being additive, can you just have it like filter out and remove things in people that you don't like? So I can see the real world, but without all the...
This is the feature request part of the program.
Yeah. Well, I just assumed it was there already. This must be why people buy it, so that we don't have...
But Chet, if you've never tried this kind of headset, it's actually really impressive because the latency, even with the cameras, there's like super low latency. They match the field of view really closely to your actual, field of view from your eyes, and it feels extremely real.
You talked about cardboard, but I remember that was a big thing when we had, what's it called, Daydreams? Was the next iteration, and they did a lot of work on Android itself to lower that latency, right? Where I know when you ran that app, it would sort of put everything super high.
Yeah, but that work was initially just purely for VR rendering. But here you add something else in the mix. You first need to capture the outside world, then do processing on that, then do your rendering. So
even harder.
Yeah, I remember one of the performance things was they went down to single buffered mode specifically so that they could drop that latency by a frame, which turns out actually matters. I don't know if we're still doing single buffering or if processors have gotten much faster since then.
There are smarter people than us working on this, and they're doing a great job.
So let's talk about this week's announcements. You said there was something that was just announced. Can you sort of fill us in?
There was a set of announcements, like a lot of things that were announced, like based on the Android X platform. So the first one is a number of like features that have been added to the Galaxy XR and Android XR. but also a couple of new form factors. One of them is the one that we just mentioned, the XR glasses, which is similar to the headset, with the difference that, again, you are not looking at a camera anymore. It's transparent. So what you are basically is getting an additive display, and you get to see like things painted on in front of you.
And it's
So these are like physical glasses then? Like there's glass lenses and then there's some kind of a projection system on top of it?
Correct, yes.
But it's monocular, right, for now?
No, the XR glasses is actually, you get two different set of displays. So it's 3D, and it is based on the same, like actually the same applications that you can run on the headset, you can run on those glasses.
You can close one of your eyes if you wanted to do binocular.
Thanks,
Could do
Chet.
like the pirate thing, right?
Yeah, so Romain, what you are talking about is the other announcement, which is AI glasses. And
Oh, sorry. So XR glasses, AI glasses.
yes.
Whoa. What? Is the difference? Okay.
It is a difference. So AI glasses, it's another form factor, which is monocular. Also, again, you get a display in front of your eyes, and then you see the UI render, and it's experience where you see notifications, or you can see navigation, or you can see a bunch of things in front of your face.
But only in front of one.
One eye, yes.
This is a bit like Google Glass, right? Where you had this thing in the upper right corner and you would glance up there and you would see a projection of notifications.
Yeah, I never tried Google Glass, but like I'm pretty sure that is a
Well,
very
the part
similar
that's
experience.
that's impressive about this kind of form factor is that they do look like regular glasses.
Yep.
And I think people outside don't see what goes into your eye, right? Like you don't see the screen from... Like if you're wearing the glasses, I'm looking at you, I can't see a screen.
Yeah, at this distance, again, from the glasses that I tried, like it is really hard to see. So you can tell that there is kind of like a little bit of distortion in one of the eyes, but like it's really like you need to know that it's there.
Right.
It's really hard to see, and they definitely don't see the content that you are seeing.
I wonder if it's like a really subtle version of when you're talking to somebody and then suddenly they just look down at their watch and you realize that they're not paying attention to you, they're paying attention to this instead. Except in the glasses, it'd just be their eyes just like vary a few millimeters. Like, oh, they're tuned into another world.
Sorry for changing the subject, but I sometimes have to glance at my watch because I know I have something coming up, but I'm not bored. How do you handle that situation of like I don't want to send a signal of
Well, I handle
you
the
can just
situation
ignore the
because my
notification.
wife told me not to wear my watch anymore because she got really sick.
I mean, this is actually something solved by the AI glasses, right?
Yeah.
They can actually tell you the time without you obviously like trying to sneak a glance to see is my next meeting
We're
starting.
so good as humans at tuning into that interaction
Yeah.
thing. They would know. Especially someone close to you, they would know immediately that you're not paying attention.
Well, I want an app for my AI glasses that just whispers in my ear, 2 minutes for the next meeting.
Yeah. Here's what they just said.
Yeah. Because when you're in a meeting with lots of other people who work at Google, they all use Google Calendar, and by default, there's always like a 10-minute warning. So like 10 minutes before, you'll just hear like bling, bling, bling,
Yep.
bling, bling around the room as everyone's phones are
You know what
telling
would be useful? Oh, so here's another feature request for the XR platform is what if you could play 2X on everybody's conversation in real time so that I don't have to sit here for the next 5 minutes. I could just sit here for the next 2.5 instead. Could we do that? Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know, but like I guess that what you can do is summarize the conversation like using
As it's
Gemini.
happening.
So it's not going to happen 2x, but like you can, I guess, pay half of the attention and then like summarize it later.
Perfect. All right.
All right. Patrick, was there anything else yesterday that, you feel like we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, there was a ton of stuff. I think at a high level, the big package, we're calling it Developer Preview 3 of the Android XR SDK.
Catchy name.
Yeah, we've been in Developer Preview now for less than a year. Super excited, breaking new ground. I think you touched on some of the new capabilities we're rolling out for immersive headsets. AI glasses, very exciting. XR glasses, very exciting. New versions of the Android Emulator, and some design guidance. Like, jokes aside, I think you're touching on some, really challenging space that developers are going to have to navigate. And we've started to roll out design guidance on topics such as like when you're designing these apps, you need to be mindful not just of the person who's using your app, but the people around that user.
In terms of design, like it's interesting what you're mentioning because so the AR glasses or AI glasses, since it's an additive display, there are things you can't do physically, like you can't render black because you can't add no light in front of your eyes. So like you have to adapt even like the color of the pixels to have a good experience.
Yeah. So and because of that, what Patrick was saying is like there is a whole new design language, and there is also like a new UI toolkit to help with that.
Is that Glimmer?
It's Jetpack Compose Glimmer. which basically it's specially designed for like a lower information density kind of display. So it's lower resolution. It is a native display, so you don't have like blacks. It has a different font, so it's more readable. So it has all these things baked into the toolkit. So it helps you build applications in an easier way. So you don't need to be thinking about all of these things as a developer.
Right. So as a developer, it's kind of like the wearables where you should not be expecting to take an existing UI, an existing activity, and just send it to the glasses and call it a day, right? Like
definitely not.
That's not the right experience.
So as far as new UI toolkit, like are these additive components? You just use this set of components instead, or is it a completely separate stack from the existing?
Well, you said it was composed, right?
It is composed. So so you use the same tools. You use the in Android Studio. You use Kotlin, Compose. But yes, it has a different set of components just because of the limited space and also because the interactions can be different. So in glasses, you have a touchpad on one side. So the interaction is not the typical touch and tap. So these components are actually built with all these things in mind. So they are easier to interact. They are how they are focused, how they are highlighted, so you know what you are going to be touching. So all these things are pre-built. So yeah, there is components like a button, text, a list, like that, all the basic components that you will need to build something.
But you know, it's interesting because I think it's one of those areas where Compose will shine, where if you have to use different components, I mean, that's extra work, but the nature of a reactive framework like Compose, you know, the UI is just the UI, and you must still be passing the same lambdas, the same data models. So you're just changing the presentation and hopefully not much else.
I wondered whether the interaction is like the Nexus one. Like, do you have a little trackball to change focus and then you hit the button to say select this one? That'd be cool. Take us back a few years.
Another feature request.
Okay. I'm full of them today. They're all useful, aren't they?
It is kind of like a trackpad, right? I guess it's one dimension. It's not two dimensions, right? But you're
do you
basically
swipe to
sliding
change
your
focus?
finger back and forth, right?
Yes, it is a touchpad, so it is a little bit like the trackpad, and that's one of the limitations on the input, and that is how you need to kind of like have a very good design in terms of like the tap order of different components. So it is predictable, and the user knows where like the next element is.
Well, and again, you probably don't want to have like a super complex UI with dozens of components. Besides, you're probably limited, I assume, by the field of view of those devices for now, right? Because it's not like they don't take over your entire field of view. They're more limited.
Yeah, exactly. In the AI classes, it is a quite restrictive like field of view. And
for now,
and for XR glasses, again, compared to the headset, it's also like a narrower field of view.
Where I think Glimmer becomes really important is with AI glasses, because the objectives and the constraints are so different than other devices. The way that I think about it is kind of like Android's been operating across a ton of different screen sizes for a long time. I think of it, a little bit more like the watch compared to a phone or a tablet. Glimmer is going to be the best way that we can deliver experiences on AI glasses. When you're talking about XR glasses, where your field of view might be more limited than something like the Galaxy XR, we're still using the same composables that you would use on a phone or a tablet a lot of the time.
So you may have more complex experiences. But I assume, like in terms of design, you still want. I mean, if it's gonna be in front of you, you still want to be careful about what you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah. And something like notifications, though, that makes sense across all these surfaces. So, if you've built your notifications appropriately for phones, tablets, other devices, they're gonna work across all of these XR experiences.
So I realized how useful it would have been to actually try these devices on before sitting down in a chair and talking about them and pretending to be knowledgeable. But I'm trying to understand the difference between the UIs. It seems like in the AI case, you've just got a limited number of components that are going to be additive to the real world that you're seeing, as opposed to the XR headset, where it is like the UI is occupying the entire screen. Is that right? That's why that's a little closer to a traditional like Compose thing, as opposed to Glimmer just saying, well, I've got a notification about this thing, or I've got a little. I don't know what are the UI experiences here.
And one thing that helps me to think about the naming is both XR glasses and the XR headset. They share a common stack. So you can build an application for one, and it will work out of the box without you having to match in the other one. Or you can run any Android application without any modification. You can run it on both, which is, I think, that is one of the really cool things about the XR ecosystem in Android XR, which is any application in Play, in the Play Store, you can actually get it running on glasses without any modification, and it will work. Now, you probably want to adapt it, and in the same way that you make the same work for tablets and phones, you probably want to work on your application to adapt it for the XR form factor, but without doing anything, it will work out of the box. While on the AI glasses, there is work to be done. You need to use Glimmer to kind of get the best experience out of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're saying, because adapting your app is going to mean very different things for different apps, right? Like if you have a to-do list app, if it's in XR, I would assume it's still pretty much a flat rectangle that looks and behaves the same. But if you have an app like, I don't know, you do some kind of e-commerce application and you happen to have 3D models for your products, in XR you could do very interesting things, as opposed to just a flat version of the object.
Yeah, that's true. But also, even if you have the to-do app, like there is like kind of different tiers of like how much you want to adapt the app.
But my point is you're not going to turn it into like a 3D environment. I mean, you could remember Jurassic Park with the 3D file explorer.
I know Unix.
Yes, I know.
I remember that. I just saw something come across my newsfeed last night about Google announcing spatialization. Did we talk about this yesterday in the event? Was that from the XR event?
Yeah, that was one of the features announced.
So that is
for the
spatialization.
So we take the 2D terminal that you wrote LS and we turn it into a 3D Jurassic Park, flight scene. No, what is this feature?
So, as I understand the feature, is basically for any 2D like rendering that you might have, like because you can render, for example, you can connect it to your PC and see in your glasses or in your headset, you can actually see what you are seeing on the PC. So you have any content that implies like 3D, even though it might be rendered using 2D graphics, the glasses will be able to kind of transform it into like a 3D space. So you will be able to move around, and you will have the perception of the space. And
that sounds super cool, but it's the kind of feature, like as an engineer, the first thing I want to do is like break it and see where it fails.
So where does I assume that these glasses, both the headset and the AI glasses, are talking to your phone, which is doing the processing for these, or because otherwise, like these devices are quite small. You're not going to put all that CPU power in the glasses themselves. Like the original cardboard, obviously that was just like a display for all the stuff happening on your phone. Is that still the model?
No, cardboard, you actually put the phone.
Yeah, the phone was on your face.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
That was the whole point of the cardboard, was to hold the phone.
Why don't we still have that?
For XR headsets, XR glasses, they're actually standalone devices. I don't need any other device around. Okay. I can use them fully and
and that's because like you've got a headset that can actually hold all that hardware in it, right?
Yeah, with the XR glasses, the wired XR glasses in particular, they move the bulk of the compute off of the frames so that it's really lightweight, really portable, and exists in a puck that's connected by a wire.
Oh, okay. And then can you have that puck surgically inserted into your brain? So then you're just running like a very short wire.
Lots of feature requests.
And that's why Chet is not in charge of product decisions.
Okay, so that was the XR. For the AI, it's just like, is it like Android Auto where it's just like
it is actually pretty much like that. So basically the stack underneath is projecting like from the phone into the glasses. So it's kind of like an external display from the point of view of the phone. But your app will run and it will use the CPU of your phone.
So can I ask a completely unrelated question, but I think Tor's going to like it. You're on the tools team.
That was going to be my question too.
What's the tooling experience for this?
Well, thanks for asking. Yes. So
my job here is done.
If we did a good job, like the tooling experience will be pretty much the same tooling experience as for any other form factor.
Update your Gradle plugin version.
Yes, pretty much. So make sure that you have the latest dependencies of your libraries and get it running.
Perfect.
But basically, the announcement yesterday included a new emulator for AI glasses. So obviously, because it's a new form factor, like that there is some experience that is like different. So we built a new emulator to actually emulate the software running on the glasses. And basically, other than that, it should be pretty much the same. So you can build your application. There is a new template. So if you download the latest canary of Android Studio today, you will have a new template for AI glasses that you can create. You can download the AI glasses emulator and a phone emulator, and you can start developing.
So I'm actually curious, what's the challenge to build these kind of emulators? Because you need to be able to like mimic, a real world environment. So what did you have to do?
So So that depends on the form factor, right? AI glasses, the way that it works is there is no like real world environment. What we have is a background that it helps you to understand basically how your UI is going to render in the real life world.
And can you change different backgrounds? Can you see like for instance,
not at the moment, but you will be able to do it.
All variations on Diego's living room.
Yes, pretty much. But yeah, the idea is you will be able to see how your UI looks on a dark background, on a light background. So the emulator at the moment, there is only one. You can use the Compose preview. And in the Compose preview, we already have like 3 different backgrounds where you can, again, you build your UI. And then if you want to see how it reacts to different live environments, you can just switch it there. But the experience is pretty much the same as working in any other form factor. So whether it's Wear or the phone, you use Compose, you use Kotlin to just deploy. You can debug, profile, the same thing. So the tooling experience, coming back to your question, should be very similar.
I mean, the experience is the same, but I think one thing that was interesting is like Layout Inspector. The way that used to work was that, we would basically fetch the view hierarchy from the phone, and you would get the bounding rectangles. And so when you select something in the tree, we just paint in the Layout Inspector, we paint the red rectangle around it. With XR, because there's that transformation, if you have a straight line in 3D, it actually is curved. Or you might be looking at it sideways. And so these square bounding boxes did not work. And so the team had to do a lot of work. I don't know, you're familiar with the work. You want to describe what we ended up doing?
Yeah, that's a change that we had to do last year for the XR headset, right? And as Tori is saying, like the layout inspector used to work in a way where like we will extract a bitmap with what is currently being displayed on your phone. And then on a separate channel, we will get the current hierarchy. But that didn't work because of the camera transformation. So obviously you don't want something to be painted on top and then have like the wrong 3D projection. And because it's kind of useless. So underneath, and like we made a lot of changes in the stack. So the rendering was moved from doing it in Android Studio to doing it in the on device. So what you get is the same experience, but now there is this change. Hopefully, like developers won't be able to tell that actually we did all that work, and that's the idea. It will work in the same way. But now
that's good because it unifies, because there were other debugging tools that are still available in developer settings that will trigger rendering on device. And that was the one that was not. So it's kind of nice that they all work the same way.
And I think this is a good example too of how much work the tools team has to do just to keep things working. We
Are you trying to get another promotion, Tor? Yeah, we know your job is hard.
No, but it's just one of those things where like, why do things break? Why is this thing broken in the latest thing? And it's like because the world is always changing on us. The OS, the devices, Kotlin, IntelliJ. There's all these things to just to this was a pretty good example, right, of lots of work just to keep things going. Gradle 9 is another one of those things the team is doing so much work on. So
on the surface, it looks like you just move like painting boxes from like Android Studio to the device, but like obviously that is a lot of work to just get the same experience. And now you can basically walk around your 3D environment and have the boxes.
The experience I had with that tour was when I was working on color management to be able to do white color gamut in the apps, and then I realized that none of the screenshot tools could understand white gamut, so they would lose the information. So I had to go fix even the JVM on macOS for Android Studio had to be fixed.
Yeah.
So I hear you.
I remember the patch. Yeah, it's good.
Cool. Any other challenge like for developers if they don't have access to a headset? Like what is the emulator enough? I mean, I hope it is, but
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to achieve, right? Like if you are trying to build like a full 3D environment and like recognize gestures from your hands and stuff like that, the emulator is going to be limited because it's really hard to emulate that experience on basically a window.
It's pretty easy. Ask developers to buy a headset, and then you can have the headset send all the information to the emulator. Problem solved.
Yeah, that's definitely another feature request.
Actually, so here's a feature request. Maybe my only feature request is maybe not totally idiotic, which is the ability to replace the default background with one of your own that actually has the objects that you want it to detect. Right. So you had the example of hands in front of you. Well, if there's a background image that has hands, then that could at least be a starting point for recognizing that in your software.
That's definitely in the list of features that we've been hearing about. Like, again, there is it is very important for developers to be able to have their own environments that actually have 3D objects that you can recognize using AR Core, for example, like to be able to see where there is a plane and to be able to put objects on top of that.
Right.
So that is definitely something that we've been hearing. And
do we still use? Because I remember for AR Core, we had this feature in the emulator where you could feed the camera a 3D scene and you could move through the 3D scene. So do we still use that for XR?
At the moment, I don't think that you can have a 3D scene. You can feed like images and video, but like not a 3D scene. But like it is something that will become more and more important with this.
Yeah, it feels like a very circular thing where you have a 3D scene that you pretend is a camera so that the XR headset can recognize a 3D scene so you can render a 3D scene. But okay, so what you're saying is that there's still work to do?
There is a lot of work to do.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, the emulator is useful. It's a great place to start, especially like if you've never touched an XR device. And,
at least to get a taste.
Yeah, run your app, see how it goes. And then as you run into things where you're like, oh, I need the ability to simulate hands, like, reach out, like file a feature request. Like there is basically an infinite number of things we can build, and we are very closely tuned into what developers are asking for, so we can start by unblocking folks.
So let's say I run my app and I see my window. Okay, cool, it worked. But I'm assuming that there's things I can do to make it better. I know we have something called orbiters maybe, but like what are some things that you would recommend people do if they try running their app in the emulator and they're like, oh, this is cool. I want to support this.
Oh, is that why I can complain about the name Orbiter? Because they don't orbit anything.
I thought it should be called Satellite because it's kind of, but anyway.
They don't go around.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the very first thing, you run your app, you're excited about XR, you want to take it up a notch. If you aren't already doing a great job from an adaptive perspective broadly, I would start there because, doing things like handling hardware input peripherals like a physical keyboard or ensuring that your UI adapts well with freeform window resizing, that's going to make your experience so much better in XR and across other devices like tablets or foldables, for example.
That's a good point because I always thought that XR would be a good testing environment when you want to see if your app can adapt to multiple screens because I assume you can do freeform resizing however you want, right, in XR?
Absolutely, yeah. If unless your app has restrictions, it's a great place to try.
I mean, that's a good call because that wasn't obvious to me. I thought we would just put your app with the default size. So you're saying, okay, so it sounds like we actually do let you resize arbitrarily. I guess there's a minimum size we probably enforce.
And once you feel like you're doing a good job with adaptive UI and hardware input devices, from there, something like orbiters is a great place to start. We've actually done UX research that has shown that users actually prefer to use apps, even if they have very small adaptations. So if I have my app's UI, it's doing pretty well with regards to freeform window resizing. And then I add an orbiter, just that one small change.
Can you quickly explain what an orbiter is?
Should probably start there. So an orbiter is a component that in your 2D UI hierarchy, you can wrap this composable around something like a navigation rail or maybe a search bar. And when spatial UI is not available, whether you're on a phone or a tablet or whether you're in home space, that component just behaves the way that it normally would. And then when spatial UI is available, it will be automatically extracted from your 2D UI hierarchy, and it'll be attached, static, a geosynchronous orbit, if you will.
A way to think about this is kind of like in desktop apps when you have floating toolbars, right? That are not part of the main window, but that are on the side. The emulator actually has that.
Well, the standalone emulator.
The standalone emulator, which I never use, but it has an orbiter.
Yeah. So what's a good example? Like if I have a calculator,
mm-hmm.
Is there anything I would want to do there? Like would I want to pull the display out or like the reset button, or is there nothing obvious I would do with the calculator?
Yeah, that's a good question. The way that I think about...
I just want the record to show that I have now gotten 2 that's a good questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Keep going.
They're all good.
We're keeping score here.
I think you're winning. Yeah, I mean, the way that I think about orbiters at a high level is they are a great fit for controls that impact the content of your panel. So that's why navigation works really well, because as a user, I'm interacting with an orbiter and it changes what is present in that panel. Same thing with something, like a search bar. It pulls things out so that you're not distracting from the content with the controls. With a calculator, I'd have to think about it. Off the top of my head, I don't know that the buttons would make sense, but perhaps something like history, for example, like if you wanted to go back through previous calculations.
But that's a good example because I think it shows that you don't have to force it either.
Yeah.
Or if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit, right?
Yeah. I worked on a VR project way, way, way long ago, which soured me to a lot of things because there were people in that world, and I think this is still true, where all of a sudden, we can do that. Well, everything needs to go in this direction. And so all of a sudden, our app had all this like silly stuff, including like a console emulator sitting in a 3D world. And like some things just work better in 2D, right? The pieces of paper on my desk are not 3D cubes that I have to manipulate. There's a lot that 2D UIs do for us. So yeah, not having to force the calculator into 3D just because we could.
I think everybody should go watch that episode of the TV show Community about VR because it was this 90s vision of VR where like to copy a file, you have to climb a ladder, open a drawer, take the file out.
So easy.
Yes. So
yeah.
easy.
No, I think your sort of definition maybe of having content and then putting stuff that shouldn't distract from the content away is good.
But that's why you should probably start by, you mentioned the design guidelines. So if you're interested in XR, go read the design guidelines.
Yeah, and there is one thing, like, again, we are providing with a set of tools and libraries to help with this, right? Like if you're using Material 3 and you are like hopefully following the guidelines to make your applications already adaptive, so they actually resize nicely from a phone to a tablet. So there are these components that are called scaffolds that actually follow like a set of common patterns for many applications, like a to-do app or like an email application. So if you use those, that there is a way at the moment that you can actually make them automatically like follow the best XR practices. So you will get orbiters automatically for your navigation, for example. You just need to be using those components. So they will work nicely on a tablet, but also the moment that you run them on XR, they will adapt to the UI.
The material XR component overrides. So yeah, in theory, you implement things once and you wrap the components that you'd like to spatialize themselves when the capability is available, and the system does the rest for you.
Are there apps that you would call out as like good apps to look at to get inspiration from? I'm assuming that we've worked with some apps that are maybe in the system image or others that like are good examples of what to do.
Calculator.
Obviously the calculator.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them. I love Google Photos. I think YouTube is a great example of seeing immersive video, and the catalog is huge, so it's fun to use as well. Some of the developers that we've worked with, like Adobe brought Project Pulsar. It blew my mind the first time that I tried it.
What is that?
It's a video editing app, but it lets you take 2D video and upload it, and it will spatialize it for you at depth. And then as a user, I can add 3D objects or text into the scene, and it will actually layer in between like the elements in my video at the appropriate depth. And then you can export it as a 2D video if you'd like, or
cool.
stereoscopic, or you can export it.
I don't know if they use this, but I saw a cool video on YouTube the other day, and it was basically someone who'd taken photographs, like historical photographs. I think it was from like New York Harbor or something. But they then turned it into like a 3D video. And of course, it's limited where it shows, but it was kind of nice to get a better sense of the space. Obviously, some of it's hallucinated. But still, I thought it was a really cool application.
It's the Harry Potter photographs coming to life.
Yeah.
In creepy ways because they're real. So I've been sitting here imagining so what you talked about resizable windows. I look forward to like poking myself in the eye to like expand these things. You'll constantly be cleaning your AI glasses because you've got finger smudges off them. Anyway, I had a serious question, which was the devices. So obviously nobody has an AI glasses device right now, right? That was just announced as a platform, which means there's no accompanying hardware. There's only the emulator, which hopefully will be enough module of the things we were talking about. Can you use an existing XR headset to do AI glasses development, or are they just like can you can you basically mimic so that you have some ability to look around an environment and see whether your AI UI is going to work?
So at the moment, if you want to do AI classes development, the best tool that you have available is
Just
the
emulator.
emulator.
Okay.
It's just the
Right.
emulator.
Right.
If you want to do XR classes development,
Yep.
then yes, you also have an XR classes emulator. But as we said, like
Yep.
even for the headset, you can use that, build your application, specialize it, like get the orbiters right, and then that will work automatically out of the box.
I think it was a cool feature request, though. Basically an AI glass
Emulator
emulation in XR.
I think
where it fakes up the world, but puts your glasses app on top is kind of a nice idea.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how hard it is to inject that much more intelligence into the emulator, because even given the current state of emulators for phone development, like you're still limited to this like 3D world.
I didn't necessarily mean emulator. I mean as
like
as part of physical XR glasses. It would be, I don't have AI glasses yet. I have an XR. If I could use this and have it pretend to be glasses that are in my glasses app with world pass-through, for example.
Yeah,
I like it.
It should be possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's
It's a small matter of programming.
Somebody just needs to come up with a new acronym for the thing that's XR glasses, but it's AI glasses as well. And I don't know.
Speaking of that, the demos I've seen of sort of using Gemini with these glasses is really sort of you're prompting the system. Is there a way for apps to participate? If I want like the AI to be able to deep link into my app, for example, do we have any sort of support or guidance for that yet?
I'm not super familiar. Like I think that what you are basically referring to is app functions. So it's basically an API that will allow your application to integrate with Gemini.
And that's not specific to XR, right? That's part of...
Yeah, but it is what you will use to integrate with Gemini, but yeah, not specific to XR. Yeah.
I mean, you have the full capability to interact with your app through the normal Android stuff, right? Like whether it's a Glimmer UI or normal Compose UI on XR glasses, like you can do all the normal interactions that you could, whether it's this Gemini API or not, right?
I was thinking,
is there something special?
Well, if my app is I'm going to make up a new example. Another calculator.
Too.
Yeah. But it does something clever. It is a different calculator. No, I'll make a different example, actually.
Floating.
Note-taking app, right?
Tor, do you know
If
how
I
to
wanna-
write any other app than a calculator?
If I'm doing a note-taking app and I want to basically take a note, I want to support, like just talking to my glass and saying, oh, remind me, blah, 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 blah. And I want that to go into my note-taking app as a note. How do I teach the system about
Well, again,
that?
it's the app functions idea.
It sounds like it's app functions. Okay.
Yes. But again, I'm not super familiar with the API itself, so
Okay.
cannot comment on that.
Follow-up episode.
Yes. Speaking of follow-ups, have we forgotten to ask anything? Did you have another question?
No. What have we not asked about?
Well, for folks who haven't watched the announcement...
Patrick's looking into his AI glasses. What did they
Yes.
I was going to ask, what's the... so hardware has been announced. What's available? What's not available? Like if I'm interested in this kind of development for my app, like what can I buy?
So at the moment, the only thing that you can buy is the Galaxy XR headset.
Okay.
That's the only thing that is available. As part of the announcements, again, in terms of like AI glasses, there was an announcement that they are coming and a couple of like brand partners that are going to collaborate on building these experiences.
And we don't talk about the future, so...
Exactly. So I'm not going to get too much into that. In terms of like XR glasses, there was also the announcement of like Project Aura, which is the XReal Project Aura glasses, which is the device that actually implements this new form factor, and there were demos and they were showing the capabilities and how it looks like. But also you cannot get those.
Wait, I'm confused. What's the difference between Aura and you talked about the Samsung XR thing?
So the Samsung, the Galaxy XR is a headset. The Aura is an XR glasses. So it's, as we said, you are not seeing through a display. It's actually transparent glasses.
Okay.
It's from XReal, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And XReal is a company that makes glasses that can connect to your phone, and you can project basically your phone in the glasses.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know, AR, however you want to call it.
Yes.
The way I think of XR as a term is it's broader than the other term.
Right.
Encompasses AR, VR, MR.
Stuff in front of you.
Yeah. Extending your reality.
Cool.
Anything else?
No?
Download the Canary.
Yeah.
Download the
Any
Canary. I guess
call to action.
Yes. So download the Canary, install the emulators. If you have any applications that you want to see how they look on the headset, now is a good time to start playing with it and like see how they look in XR glasses. And start playing with like Glimmer and seeing like how your application can adapt to this new form factor and how you can do the best use of this device. And yeah, test the tools and give us your feedback.
I'm excited about it. I actually used Glass for a while back in whenever it was, 20, I don't know, 16, 17. And it was good for some applications, you know, so like, and it'd be fun to see a modern take on it. With
I can't wait to see our calculator.
And I've had glasses for many years, so
yeah,
I'll always.
You're a glasses expert.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
For me, I think the number one thing is just try it. Like whether you're trying your existing app or whether you're trying to create something greenfield, like just see what's possible today. I think the space has been exciting for a long time, but just in the last few years, what we've seen in hardware advances, I feel like things are already pretty different. And what gets me personally most excited is, now this is available to Android developers broadly in a way that is similar by design. Like the tooling is almost exactly the same as what you know. The toolkit, you can already use Compose. We do everything we can to try to make it easy to get started and make it so that your app already does really well out of the box. And I think what we're going to see Android developers doing in the next few years, I think that is what is most exciting to me personally.
Well, it greatly lowers the barrier of entry, right? Because VR until now, you kind of had to use like specialized engines or SDKs. So it was a lot of extra work. So it's nice to know that your app can just work for the most part, and then you can maybe tweak it.
And the developer experience should be familiar. The tools you're using, almost the same libraries.
And then however much we want to put in your experience to adapt it to those form factors, like that depends on you, on your app, whatever. But the fact that the base app is available, that's fantastic.
To me, that's the most important thing that the platform brings, which is like using the same tools, the same APIs that are familiar to you. You can like build experiences already for these new form factors. You can still use Unity or OpenXR or like WebXR if you want to, but like yes.
But it's probably going to be for the more advanced, like
exactly.
full-blown 3D worlds, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And are there some 3D capabilities built into the XR platform? Like if I want to render a 3D object. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super excited about that. We lean into the GLTF standard, open standard, from Kronos Group for all of our 3D model APIs. The really nice thing is if you invest in hiring a technical artist to create a 3D model or whether you buy one off the shelf, those are very portable. It should be broadly useful for you even outside of Android.
GLTF stands for
Romain graphics.
It's
just like a modeling
transmission.
I think it's GL as in OpenGL transmission format. It starts
surface description, like what?
So a GLTF, well, it has evolved to contain a lot of things, but fundamentally, you have your model, so the triangles, and then you have the materials and the textures.
Okay.
Now you can also embed animations. I think they've been working on physics and scripts. But different viewers, it's a lot of extensions, so not all viewers will support everything. But yeah, it's a pretty advanced file format, and it's supported by a lot of tools, including free tools like Blender. And there's a lot of like good resources online where you can download free GLTF files, like on sketchfab.com, for instance, tons of beautiful files. So it's easy to get started. That's the point. Cool. And you don't have to understand 3D rendering. It's writing a GLTF viewer is a different thing.
Yeah, if you want to see an example of working with GLTFs, we have the Hello Android XR sample app up on GitHub. There we show how to position a GLTF or how to animate it or even how to do some more late breaking things like swap out the texture and the material that wraps around the skeleton, the mesh. So check that out if you want to get started.
Great. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.